Good morning, everybody. Glad to have you here with us. If you would start by standing with us, we would love to do some music with you. And if at any point you decide you'd like to sit down or participate, however feels most comfortable to you, would be great. Thanks for being patient, everybody.
That's all right. Even if we have a little hump.
We got some. Technical difficulties are part of the experience sometimes. your love. Showing us how. Make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is darkness, let me shine light. And may your love cause us to open up, cause us to open up our hearts. May your light cause us to shine so bright that we bring hope into the dark. All that we do without love it means nothing. Grant us the courage to give. As you're calling, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me shine so bright that we bring hope into the dark. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the first will be last, and the last will be first. The meek will inherit the earth. Sing it again. The meek will inherit the earth. The meek will inherit the earth. The first will be last, and the last will be first. The meek will inherit the earth. Jubilee, now is the year of his favor. Jubilee, now in the weary creation. Now bring in the year of Jubilee. The wicked will lose what they stole. The wicked will lose what they stole. And all that they thought they could own and control. The wicked will lose what they stole. The wicked will lose what they stole. The wicked will lose what they stole. And all that they thought they could own and control. The wicked will lose what they stole. Oh, Jubilee, now is the year of his favor. Jubilee, rest for the weary creation. Now bring in the year of Jubilee. Turn now. Turn now from evil to good. Turn now from evil to good. Then we will dwell in the land as we should. Turn now from evil to good. The earth will sigh with relief. The earth's gonna sigh with relief. There's more than enough for the hungry to feast. The earth will sigh with relief. Oh, Jubilee, now is the year of his favor. Jubilee, rest for the weary creation. Now bring in the year of Jubilee. Bring in the year. Bring in the year. Bring in the year. Bring in the year of Jubilee. From Xavier University's collection of prayers for Black History Month. A prayer from Meditations of the Heart by Howard Thurman, 20th century African-American mystic and author. If you're able, continue to stand with me and pray out loud with me. Lord, open unto me. Open unto me light for my darkness. Open unto me courage for my fear. Open unto me hope for my despair. Open unto me peace for my turmoil. Open unto me joy for my sorrow. Open unto me strength for my weakness. Open unto me wisdom for my confusion. Open unto me forgiveness for my sins. Open unto me tenderness for my toughness. Open unto me love for my hates. Open unto me thyself for myself. Lord, Lord, open unto me. Amen. So good to sing with you and pray with you. You may be seated.
Good morning, everyone. Let's give the band a big round of applause. They were amazing. Love to see the big full band. It's so awesome. Great job, you guys. I just want to say good morning. Welcome. My name is Jen Colburn, and I just want to welcome you here to Brown Line Church. And I'd like to invite you to participate in our service this morning with our live chat. You can use your phone's camera to follow the QR code on the screen to the free app Discord. And our moderator this morning will be Ed Wang, and he'll be hanging out in the chat if you have a comment or question or need anything at all. And a special hello if you are new or newer and joining us this morning. Brown Line Church is both a local and an online community. We're based here in Chicago, but we draw many from beyond Chicago each Sunday. So if you're joining us from afar, please drop in the Discord chat where you're joining us from, even if it's your living room here in Chicago. We'd love to hear from you. And this church was started to help people connect with the God of love, find spiritual health and community, and contribute to justice and healing in the world. In particular, people who feel more comfortable in culturally progressive settings rather than culturally religious settings. People who didn't grow up in a highly religious environment, or people who have chosen to leave a highly religious environment. And our guide bringing us all together here is Jesus. There are religious settings that present faith in Jesus as an exclusive thing that you're either inside or outside of. But our experience here is totally different. For us, following Jesus has always made us more open rather than more closed off. And before we get going with our message today, I'd like to offer a special invitation for our preschoolers and elementary age kids. They now have an option for their own space together to play a game with friends, read some stories, share with each other, and do some prayer. So in the back of the theater, Miss Chloe and Miss Abby are waving their hands. Parents, if you'd like your kids to join, you can help them make their way to the back there, and they'll be brought over to Theater 3. Just make sure you have a phone number on our roster sheet in case we need to contact you, and then they'll rejoin us for the end of service together. All right, with that, let me pass it to Hayley for this morning's message. Let's give her a warm welcome, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. Get settled here. All right. So we are about to enter into the season of Lent, which in the Christian calendar marks the days leading up to Easter, when we remember and celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. Traditionally, to mark Lent, people give up something. Vince has named chocolate as a really popular one. I know growing up, giving up soda, or for all of you Midwesterners, giving up pop was another popular one. One year, my childhood church collectively gave up complaining, which was a really interesting thing. We were given bracelets, and every time that we complained, we were told we had to switch the bracelet from one wrist to the other. I don't know how effective it was. I just did a lot of switching. In college, I was introduced to the idea that Lent can actually be a time where you take up a new practice instead of giving something up or alongside of giving something up. So as a community at Brown Line, we are embarking on our second annual practice of giving up false, unhelpful, or incomplete beliefs for Lent. And I love this because it's a combination of both. You're giving something up, but you're taking up something new in its place. We've been going back to an encouragement from Richard Rohr that's been helpful, that you can't think yourself into new ways of living. You have to live yourself into new ways of thinking. So with that in mind, each week we want to offer some practical experiments to help live yourself into new ways of thinking as we talk through giving up unhelpful beliefs or a set of beliefs each week. So as we look ahead to this Lenten experiment that's starting next Sunday, Vince and I wanted to take the time both last week and this week to talk about the need for self-compassion when giving up unhelpful beliefs. Maybe these are beliefs that you held in a previous season of life or you're actively sorting through right now, or it could be beliefs that people you love and care about may have held or still hold. It can be really tempting, I think, for judgment to be the underlying tone of this process, whether you're judging your past self or judging others. Last year, in preparation for Lent, we used the phrase looking lovingly at your past self, and I think about that a lot. And as Vince named for us last week, another really grounding phrase that we can come back to is I was doing the best I could with what I had. I can offer myself grace and compassion when I recognize just the really natural and necessary unfolding and shifting of beliefs in my life. And we can extend this statement to others. They were doing the best they could with what they had, which I think is important when we attach particularly harmful or unhelpful beliefs that we may have picked up from specific people in our lives. We can have grace and compassion when we think about just how human people are. So continuing in that thread this week, I'd like to spend some time unpacking an idea that I've borrowed from Pastor Judy Peterson. This is the idea of composting when it comes to unlearning unhelpful beliefs. And typically, as a rule, I love metaphors, but I try to stay away from using metaphors that I don't have a ton of experience with. And while I wish for the sake of sustainability, I could say I'm an avid composter. I'm really not. Maybe some of you have more hands-on experience with composting. Maybe you don't. But for me, I've really come to prefer this idea of composting beliefs over the typical term deconstructing beliefs. Because composting gets at how natural this process is, how organic it can be, and it points to how messy it can be too. Most importantly, I think that composting shows us that nothing is wasted in the process. Old beliefs, old theologies can be broken down and can actually provide nourishment and a deeper understanding for the growing of new beliefs. And I want to name that for some of us, the composting of unhelpful beliefs might be breaking down ideas that we picked up in previous faith settings. And for others who maybe didn't grow up in any type of a religious environment, it may be breaking down some ideologies about the world, beliefs about ourselves or about other people that we picked up from our upbringing, from our family culture, things like that. Likely for you, it's somewhat of a mix. And it's just a reminder that all of us are on this necessary journey of both learning and unlearning. Rather than giving into this negative, judgmental view of wanting to just scrap it all, or maybe trying to say, like, I've always been in this enlightened and arrived place, I think we can honor the journey with self-compassion and a greater sense of humility. Composting points to just how simultaneous the breaking down and the growing can be. It's not a neat before and after. Author Sue Monk Kidd describes this in her writing, saying, always, always, we are waking up and waking up some more. This is an ongoing, never-ending process of coming to new realizations. Always, always, we are waking up and waking up some more. Maybe that feels kind of daunting, that you just have to keep waking up and keep waking up some more, but I hope that that feels really exciting too. So I wanted to ground this idea of composting in Scripture for us this morning. So I pulled some excerpts out of a longer passage to help us get a better idea of what creative repurposing can look like. So I'll take some time here to read from parts of John 15, and we can put that up on the screen. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He removes every branch in me that bears no fruit, Every branch that bears fruit, he prunes to make it bear more fruit. Whoever does not abide in me is thrown away like a branch and withers. Such branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. I have said these things to you so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. So when we're looking at these words of Jesus as they're recorded in the book of John, at first glance, parts of this passage can seem kind of violent. You're throwing away branches that aren't bearing fruit and you're tossing them in fire. I think burning and fiery imagery should likely raise some red flags for us. But there are two things that I find really helpful in this passage. It's helpful for us to remember for understanding this idea of composting old beliefs. The first is that it's important to look at what is being cast aside, what is being pruned away and tossed in the fire. Now, it may be tempting to read in that Jesus is talking about pruning away incorrect or uncertain beliefs, or wavering faithfulness, or concepts like not being pure or having doubts. But that's not what it says here. Because the fruit that's growing is characterized by two things: abiding in love and having complete joy. So whatever is getting in the way of being loving is pruned away. The pruning, composting process should bring us to more and more loving beliefs, more and more inclusive, more and more liberating, more and more hopeful. That is the fruit that should grow from following Jesus. So this means that if your theology or ideology is getting in the way of loving people or loving yourself fully, it's not helpful. It needs to be pruned away and tossed in the fire. The second reminder is that it's important to look at the way what is no longer useful is being treated. Because again, throwing branches that aren't bearing fruit into a fire seems pretty destructive and violent. But the burning has a purpose here. It isn't wasting what is no longer bringing about love. In the burning, the ashes can help make soil fertile for new things to grow. Even the removing of what is no longer helpful can contribute to healthy growth. Nothing is wasted. So I want to pause here to encourage you to think of something that you no longer believe, whether it's about God, about yourself, about the world. Think of this belief. If it's helpful for you to share it with others, you can put that in our chat on Discord or talk about it with someone later. But identify something that you no longer believe to be true. And maybe instead of just tossing away that belief, trying to pretend like it never existed, start to think about what would composting this belief actually look like. Now, this is going to be different for all of us, but I wanted to give a couple of examples of what composting old beliefs could look like. And I'll start with one that's a little bit more of a non-religious belief. So this is a belief that I have been composting and giving up. The belief is that my worth is tied to my productivity. As Brené Brown puts it, I'm a recovering perfectionist and an aspiring good enough-ist. And I wonder for anyone here if this feels like something that you've been convinced of at some point in time. Even if you haven't explicitly thought, my worth is tied to my productivity, I think it's really hard to escape the influence of productivity culture and grind culture that surrounds us. And for me, recognizing just how much my self-worth was tied up in productivity and perfectionism was a really important realization. But it was just important to realize that belief was not serving me. Rather than being a source of motivation, it was turning into a source of shame. And this for me started really early in life. I can remember sitting in my childhood bedroom with a journal with butterflies on the front of it, mapping out in purple gel pen each step of my day, what it was going to look like. All of the things that I needed to accomplish, step by step, task by task. It was a very detailed outline. So at the end of the day, when it was all checked off, I could say, I had a good day today. And the underlying message here was, I am good. But then when I started experiencing some health issues, my threshold for what was actually possible for me to accomplish was drastically lowered. But that inner belief of self-worth tied to productivity was so loud. And at the end of the day, when almost nothing was checked off, I would say, I had a bad day today. And the underlying message was, I am a failure. And I wish that I could go and sit with my younger self and tell her, you are doing the best you can with what you have. I wish I could show her that slowing down is okay and necessary and not a sign of failure. Now, it could be easy to say, what a waste, all of that time trying to run and keep up with a perfectionist image, filling every moment of my day, feeling like I was never doing enough. But I think there are a couple ways that composting is helpful here. Reincorporating an old belief into present life. I can hold in mind now what it feels like to be burnt out, stuck in shame, and running to keep up. Maybe you know that that feels like too. For me, knowing how fully toxic grind culture can be helps me set boundaries around my time now in a much healthier way. I almost needed to know the unhealthy side of it in order to prioritize having healthier solutions. And another way that I can repurpose things here is that there are some motivational tools that I've picked up that do serve me well, that I can lean into. Things like behavioral activation, where you start with small and steady tasks. You don't just jump straight into the deep end. Or having bite-sized expectations for what you are able to accomplish moment by moment instead of having this all or nothing thinking. And I picked those up as I was taking apart this belief, not swinging to the complete other side of doing absolutely nothing, but still finding a way to make it through the day. This is the process of keeping what is useful and repurposing it so that it can grow in a healthier way. If this feels like a belief that you have taken apart for yourself or you want to keep exploring, this idea that productivity and self-worth go hand in hand, there's an opportunity during Lent for you to explore this a bit more. I'm hoping that people will join me for a book club. Tricia Hersey's book, Rest as Resistance, a Manifesto, is one that I'm really excited to read. I've heard some wonderful conversations with her and other people on podcasts lately. Tricia is behind the NAP ministry, which has this idea of undoing the belief that rest is a privilege, and instead looking at rest as a human right, as fuel for creativity and collective reimagining, and as a form of reparations and liberation. She talks about this embodied shift away from grind culture, which is really the product of white supremacy and capitalism, and toward restorative practices and reimagining the future. So this is one that I am still learning, and I'm really excited to read this book. And if anyone is interested in reading this alongside me, I would love to be in conversation with you. Now, a second example here of composting beliefs. This one for me is more religiously backed or tied to faith. And this is the belief that God is in control and everything happens for a reason. Now, if self-worth and productivity, if that connection was a belief that I didn't even know I had for a while, this one is more an example of a belief I thought I had to have because I didn't know there were any other options. It's kind of in the same camp of, for me, believing in hell growing up in an evangelical context. For a long time, I didn't realize that I could just choose to not believe in hell as an eternal place of suffering. And this one falls into that camp as well. I thought that following Jesus meant that I had to believe that God was in control and that everything happens for a reason. And honestly, thinking through this one this week just made me sad. Because I see all the time how firm a grasp this belief can have on people. I've seen people in the midst of unthinkable tragedy go to God is in control as a source of comfort, Surely God must have a greater reason behind the death of a partner or natural disasters or whatever it may be. And it makes me sad that people, including my past self, fall into this trap that connects our deepest pains and hardships with God's permission or God's direct hand. Because if God is good and God is in control, the necessary conclusion that you have to come to is that God's version of goodness allows bad things to happen or causes bad things to happen. And I'm actually not sure which is worse. This belief was such a given for me that I can distinctively remember meeting a friend at a coffee shop in college and talking about a lot of things, but inevitably talking about this idea that God was in control, starting to sift through that belief together with that person and take it apart and rethink what I had been taught. And after grabbing coffee and having these really important realizations, starting to do the composting work, I went straight to a chapel service on campus. And during that service, I was praying up front as part of the service. So I was on the mic up front, and the first words out of my mouth were, "God, I'm grateful that you are in control." And internally, I was like, what? I just, 20 minutes prayer, had this discovery and this conversation around, I don't quite know if I believe that to be true, at least not in the way that I was told. And now here I was on autopilot, praying something that I didn't believe in. And I think this is a great example of our premise for Lent, that you can't just suddenly think yourself into a new way of living. You have to live yourself into a new way of thinking. And it speaks to the unavoidable, messy middle ground of composting beliefs. Simultaneously unlearning and relearning, it can be a little confusing. It can take a little time. Always we are waking up and waking up some more. And when I think about composting, this idea that God is in control and everything happens for a reason, something that comes up for me is this desire to listen to my feelings when I hear theology that aligns with this way of thinking. I do want to recognize that there are times when this can be used in abusive and violent ways to justify horrific injustices, and that makes me angry. But most often, I experience that sadness coming up when I see individuals navigating their own suffering and coming to conclusions that I don't think actually reflect the character of God. And it's been helpful for me to lean into that sadness, but it keeps me from going to a place of judgment. How could I have believed that? How could they have believed that? Instead, it goes to a place of empathy, because I think composting beliefs helps deepen our sense of empathy. I can understand the conclusions that other people come to because I've been there. They are doing the best they can with what they have. I think another important part of composting is recognizing this underlying desire behind the belief. The desire here is to connect God and suffering in order to find comfort. And I can do that. I can arrive at new conclusions that present God as present with us in the pain without crediting God with the pain. So as we shift back to talking about Lent, I want to challenge you to think through some of your present beliefs and how your past beliefs may have helped form them. Because it can be really tempting to separate things in my mind. This is how I was, this is how I am, this is what I used to believe, this is what I believe now. But I actually think that they're pretty intricately connected. Whether we're aware of it or not, some of this creative repurposing of old beliefs is happening under the surface, and it's helpful to actually name what's taking place. It helps us to integrate our past and our present. Again, we are not a before and after. We are continually being formed. So would you hold that imagery of composting, of replanting and getting your hands dirty in the soil? And would this be an ongoing, lifelong journey of unlearning and relearning? Would that be an exciting and a hopeful thing, something that we can embrace with compassion for ourselves and compassion for those around us? And we're going to really lean into that as we start this Lenten experiment that's starting next week, while we walk through some specific unhelpful beliefs. So maybe you feel like these are beliefs that you've already moved on from, but I bet you there are still ways, whether they're small or really, really big and impactful, that these beliefs are still affecting you. And you don't have to pretend like that doesn't exist. You can let it actually deepen your own understandings, your new beliefs, and deepen your sense of empathy with people who may still be actively sorting through these. So I'm going to take a moment here to walk through what each week we're going to be talking about. So I'll put these on the screen so that you can see them. So next week, February 26th, we'll be starting with the idea that certainty saves. March 5th, we'll be looking at an in-out mentality. March 12th, we'll be looking at the white-bearded God up in the sky. March 19th, we'll look at the health, wealth, and prosperity gospel. March 26th, we'll look at sinners in the hands of an angry God, part 1. And then the following week, April 2nd, we'll revisit that idea again. And again, each week, we're not just hoping to keep this in a headspace of let's just talk about this theoretically or theologically. We're going to give you some practical experiments and hands-on things that you can do and you can implement into your life. So again, it's that active piece of living yourself into new ways of thinking. And if one of these or a few of these really stand out to you, I'd invite you to just mark that on your calendar and make either being here or joining online a priority so that you can participate in that conversation. We did some similar topics last year, some brand new ones this year as well, and it was really wonderful to see the deep conversations that came out of exploring these topics. I'm really excited for that again this year. But wait, there's more. There will be other opportunities beyond just joining on Sundays and listening to these messages that you can participate in. We wanted to be able to offer some Lent mealtime prayers for families, friends, roommates, people that you would consider part of your community. So each Sunday, each of the 6 Sundays that we named, and then along with Ash Wednesday, which is the start of Lent, and then Good Friday, which is the end, right before Easter, we'll release some mealtime prayers, and those will go out through email and on our different social accounts, just as a guide to help guide prayer and conversation with the people you're gathered with. And then we're also going to have some new small group experiences tied to Lent. Discord is going to be a really great place to plug into small groups. If you go on our channel, they're not up now, but they will be by the end of today. There will be a channel for each new small group that's starting up. Some of them are directly tied to Lent. Some of them are a little bit separate. But those channels will be a place to express your interest, talk to the people that are leading those groups, find times to meet, things like that. So Discord is going to be really helpful there. And again, I'd love to invite you, if you are interested in looking at Tricia Hersey's book, Rest as Resistance, that's going to be one opportunity for a small group. And then we're also going to have a podcast group that's starting up. So I'm going to invite Brad Fruhoff up to actually pitch that himself, since he's going to be leading that.
All right, thank you. So the idea of this group, it's a 6-week Lent-based course that's an online community kind of setup, and the 2 leaders, the 2 hosts, are people I've been following, and I don't know about you, but when I'm exploring new things, and a lot of my journey the last 3 years or so has been exploring a lot of new ideas in theology, I tend to want to find the people who are really helpful in guiding me through those things. Tripp and Diana have been those people for me, and part of what the concept of empty altars for Lent is to look at who are all the other people that we can be looking at historically and contemporary. And I don't know if you grew up in a church or in a church community, you probably have some story of a pastor or leader who fell from grace recently, because that's happening all the time. And it's, I think, easy to get cynical about the state of American Christianity. And a course like this, is what's interesting to me about it is the idea that we can find people who are also representing the kinds of values and thoughts and theologies, and looking and pursuing the same God we're trying to pursue here. And learn more about those people, and give me, personally, new people to kind of check out and dig deeper on. So I think it's going to be a good course. The setup is going to be that they'll come out every Monday with a live stream, and you can pick it up later on YouTube or on podcast, the Homebrew Christianity podcast. I can give you the links to all that stuff. We'll probably meet, we're thinking Wednesday evening online. So if you're remote or you just don't want to go out of the house, or you have kids or whatever, it should be hopefully easier. And we'll just talk about what it is. There's readings that go along with it, but it's designed to be like helpful for you. So nobody's going to expect everybody to do all the reading or even like watch the whole thing. But dip in and hopefully find some new things that inspire you and some people you can be interested in, and give you some hope that there's a larger community of people exploring and pursuing the things we're interested in here. So if you want to know more, come talk to me or find me on Discord and friend me so I can give you some of the information. And some of you I might try to hit up personally. It starts February 27th is the first stream, so we'll get going that week.
Thanks, Brad. So that'll be a great opportunity, and I think it's a good reminder to just Brad's comments about listening to the whole thing or doing all your reading, doing your homework, that these conversations aren't designed to say, here is a whole bunch of things that you now have to put on top of what you're already thinking about and already wrestling with and already composting and deconstructing. Instead, we just want these to be tools for you to feel like you're not alone in doing this. You have a community to do this alongside of. And it's stuff that we get really excited about too. And I think when you are in that isolated place, it can feel more daunting than exciting. But this process of leaving something behind in order to take up something new, something more helpful, something that serves you and your community better is a really hopeful thing. The last thing that we've got going on for Lent too is just a funny one because we think we're funny. We're gonna make Vince and Hayley bingo cards so that while you're listening to us on Sundays, there are things we say a lot. Like you will inevitably hear me reference Brene Brown. Pastor Judy comes up a lot too. We've got a lot of people that we go to typically. So that might be a square on your bingo card. You gotta look for it, gotta see. But I'm excited to get this going next week, and I hope that you can really carry this spirit of self-compassion and compassion for those around you as you take this on with us. So I'd love to invite you to join me for a little prayer exercise now that continues on in the spirit of compassion. This is called a loving kindness meditation. And so if you want to just take a moment to get comfortable in your seat, take a few deep breaths to get settled. This prayer helps us walk through looking at ourselves, looking at our community, looking at the people who have formed us, and just offering compassion, speaking words of wellness and love over ourselves and over the people who have formed us. So if you take a moment just to take a few deep breaths and be still. And in this place of stillness and quiet, would you just bring to mind something that you are longing for in this season? Something that you are longing for today. And as you're in this place of embracing reality and looking to what you're longing for, would you say these words over yourself? May I be well. May I abide in love. May I experience joy. May I be well. May I abide in love. And may I experience joy. I invite you to extend that longing to someone in your life. Bring to mind someone who has formed you really positively. Someone you think of fondly. Someone who helps you feel like yourself. And as you bring that person to mind, would you pray these words over them? May you be well. May you abide in love. And may you experience joy. And if you're comfortable doing so, I'd invite you now to bring to mind someone that you maybe have more of a complicated relationship with you. Maybe they've had a little bit more of a negative impact on your formation. Bring them to mind. And would you pray these words over this person? May you be well. May you abide in love. And may you experience joy. And finally, I'd invite you to bring to mind a community that you are a part of. Maybe it's this community here at Brownline. Maybe it's another community in your life. Would you identify what you're longing for that community? And would you pray these words over the collective? May we be well. May we abide in love. And may we experience joy. Amen. Thank you all for joining me this morning. I'm going to invite Vince up to do some housekeeping for us and close our time with communion.
Thank you, Hayley. Let's give Hayley a hand. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Almost the end of the morning, but we still have 1 hour left. Nice to be with you all. It was great to get to sing with you all. And thank you, Hayley, for our one last preparation before Lent here. I'm looking forward to this. There was a great, oh man, I'm looking at the chat right now, and we've already got some more things to add to the bingo card, because yes, I do refer to myself as tremendously nerdy often, so we're going to make sure that's on the bingo cards. I was going to say there's a lot of great stuff in the chat this morning about composting beliefs, specifically on that God is in control idea, that there are some distinctions that you can come to when you compost that belief that are really nuanced and really important. So that one is going to come up a lot as we do these 6 Sundays of Lent. I'm looking forward to that. And anyway, so I just wanted to say thumbs up to all of what we were already talking about here. All right, let me do some quick housekeeping. This Sunday, or I should say this Wednesday, is Ash Wednesday, which is the traditional beginning of Lent. So there are several churches in Chicago that do ashes on the go. So if you're somebody who is looking for a way to mark the beginning of Lent with that traditional practice of ashes on the forehead, there are lots of churches around. If you know of any, like if you've done this in the past, I don't work downtown or anything like that, so I'm not aware of what the churches are. But if you know of any, throw them in Discord, because some people will like to begin Lent that way. So you can look in Discord if that's the case. Our first mealtime reading and prayer will go out Ash Wednesday for Lent. So if you're not able to do something or would prefer not to do the ashes on the forehead, we have our own practice of that and some things that you can try with roommates or with friends or family that day. If you are newer with us or you're not sure that we have your contact information yet and you'd like to stay in touch, we're going to put a QR code up on the screen that you can follow. This is the best way to stay in touch with Brownline Church. It'll get you on our email list. We'll also get to follow up with you. Hayley or I will follow up with you just so we can, get coffee or something like that and find out how you connected with us, whether that's here in Chicago or online. And we want to know how we can best serve you and learn a little bit about your story. So we'd love for you to fill that out. You can also follow us on social at Brownline Church for updates on Sundays or other events. And then all of our previous messages are available via YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. You can just search for Brownline Church. Hayley already mentioned some of the small group experiences that are starting up here for Lent, so we'd love for you to connect with those. Again, Discord is probably the best way to do that. Also, if you're ever looking for ways to serve, to volunteer, to to help us as a church, we obviously we turn the Davis Theater into a church every Sunday morning. So we have various jobs that we would love to put you to work if you're looking for a way to volunteer. And then there are also other ways that you can serve people in our communities, mentoring teens or elementary age kids, the Warming Center for Unhoused Neighbors that we volunteer with regularly. So if you want to volunteer, you can also let us know at any point. In Discord, if you at me, Vince, I'll get you connected with that, or you can always send us an email at brownlinechurch@gmail.com. I'll mention a quick financial update. The way that we operate here financially is people who believe in the vision of our church, setting aside money to give to help us operate. So thank you to everybody who is a donor. If you get something out of this community, we would love for you to partner with us that way. It is the way that we keep the lights on here at the Davis Theater and that our pastors pay the bills. You can follow that QR code if you want to give. And this is how we have been looking over the last several months. All right, I am going to get the privilege of closing us with our regular practice of communion this Sunday. Every week we end our services with communion, and it is our chance to reenact that pivotal moment in Jesus' life around a table with his closest friends. It gives us the opportunity to acknowledge that we are all flawed and imperfect people that need to look outside of ourselves to other people and to God for the help that we cannot give ourselves. And we do this by sharing bread in a cup that symbolizes Jesus' body broken and blood shed on the cross. We do mention the cross, in our view, is not about satisfying the wrath of an angry God, but is rather about a God who is a fellow sufferer. When we share in the cup, which represented suffering in that day, we are sharing with the God who shares with us in our limitedness, in our experience of pain and hurt and betrayal and all of those things. The God that we serve in Jesus, the God that we follow in Jesus, is not up in the sky, removed from those things, but is down with us, familiar with those things. And so while we do this, we like to capture the feel of a meal, which is the way Jesus sort of initially had this experience with his closest friends around a table. It's the way that the early church often gathered together, was around the communion ritual, and it was often a meal. There wasn't necessarily somebody up here giving a talk. There wasn't always necessarily music, but there was a meal, and people would toast. And I mean, that's what we do today, but that's maybe the best picture the best modern picture of what the early communion meals would have been like, is a toast. We raise this glass to the provider of the feast. And in communion, we are saying, we raise this glass to the one who holds us together here, the God of love that Jesus shows us. So we're going to capture that feel here in a moment. In a moment, I was going to ask everybody to get up out of their seats and become unrooted and turn to those fine, wonderful people next to you and say, hello, human being. Don't say hello, human being. That's weird. But say hello, fill in the blank name, or hi, how's it going? What's your name? And get to know those people if you don't already, or reconnect if you already know them. And we'll have crackers and juice that are being passed through the room. As they come to you, take what you would like to. If you're joining us online and you want to participate, any food or drink item will do as we participate in this together. The idea is that we're all coming together as though around a table and raising a glass to the one who holds us together. So let me ask you to stand, and we'll get some things passed in the room, and then we'll hold off on taking everything. We'll all come back together, and I'll pray over us at the end. Please. inevitable need to hold our elected officials accountable. May we have hope as we do that. Jesus, you gathered your friends together, and you broke bread, and you gave it to them, and you said, "Eat this, and when you do, do so in remembrance of me." And when supper was ended, you took the cup, which represent your suffering and your willingness to give of yourself to protect those with their backs against the wall most. And you said, "Drink this, and when you do, do so in remembrance of me." And so we do that today, God, looking to you, looking to Jesus, who shows us what you are like. You are the God that draws us into solidarity, that shows us you are with us in our great sufferings and pains, and encourages us to go and join in the sufferings and pains of others. We pray that as we enter Lent this week as a community, that you would hold us in that place of ready to compost some beliefs, that we may become more like you, that our community may reflect you more in our neighborhoods. In Jesus' name, amen. Great to be with you all, and we will see you next Sunday.